Hello everyone, my name is Beth. I'm a talent development instructor here at West Michigan Works. This is Resume Makeover. Let's get started. So as you may know, there's a lot of competition for employment in the world today, and having a bad resume can substantially reduce your chances of getting a job. So today we're going to give you some ideas on how to organize and display the information on your resume so that you stand out to employers. So, what is a resume? A resume is a summary of your professional history, including your work and volunteer experience, education, and skills. When people think of a resume, they normally picture a chronological resume, which lists your most recent job first and works backward from there. But if you have gaps in your employment history, haven't worked in a while, or are changing fields, another resume format might be a better choice. In a few slides from now, we'll talk about some alternatives. Here at West Michigan Works, we use the Pure Michigan Talent Connect, or MI Talent for short. On the left, you'll see an MI Talent resume. An MI Talent resume is good as a starter resume, but a more customized one is better, like the one on the right. So if you have an MI Talent resume, that's fine for now, but consider customizing your resume. You'll be able to change some of the headings, change the font, change the bullet points, and also be able to organize the information differently. So if you have gaps in your employment history, if you haven't worked for a long time, there's different ways of organizing the information so that it doesn't stand out to employers. Resumes are quickly scanned, on average about 10 to 15 seconds, and sometimes even less than that. Sometimes employers use what's called an ATS, or an applicant tracking system, to scan resumes. So instead of a human actually looking at your resume, it's first being scanned by a computer system. And often they're looking for matches to certain keywords. Usually the keywords are the skills posted in the job posting. So making sure that your resume is readable and to the point is extremely important. In some cases, almost 75% of job applicants are not qualified for the position they're applying for. 98% of job applicants are weeded out in the first initial screening. 2% actually make it to the next round, whether it's a phone screen or an in-person interview. And 30% of employers say their number one pet peeve is irrelevant applications, so people applying to jobs that they're not qualified for. And you may be qualified, it's just that your resume doesn't show that. So tailoring your resume specifically to the job posting is very important. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Maybe you will, but you just never know, especially for those jobs that aren't posted often or those types of jobs that people stay in a long time. So again, make it count. Here are the standard parts of a resume. First, your heading, which is just your name and contact information. At a minimum, you should include your phone number and professional email address. You can still choose to include your address if you want, but we will talk more about that later. Next, your objective statement. Today, most job seekers are moving towards a professional profile or summary statement instead. This statement is a summary of your qualifications and skills and should be tailored to each position you apply for. Next, a qualifications or skills section. This is optional, but it is a quick and easy way to highlight your top skills. It is also very readable to employers. They don't have to search through paragraphs of text, it's right there for them to see. Next, your experience and work history with applicable employer names, locations, and dates. And then finally, your education and training. You'll see that a year is not listed for this person's high school diploma. You don't need to include this, especially if you graduated a while ago. So 2 essential things you need to know about your resume. So regardless of which resume type you pick, always making sure you have proper spelling, grammar, and capitalization. And the second thing, just making sure it flows well. So your heading is your name and contact information. From there, your objective or your professional profile flows right into your work history. Your resume must market you in a way that shows you're qualified for the job. So study the job posting carefully and take note of which skills and abilities are repeated throughout the posting. If you have relevant skills and experience that the job posting lists, make sure to tailor your resume to include those things. Now that we've gone over the right things to include, let's talk about some things to avoid. First, any lengthy bullet points or paragraphs of text. Again, if an employer is actually taking the time to look at your resume, make it readable and to the point. Next, if any of the standard categories are missing, that may be a red flag to employers. At a minimum, you should have an objective statement or professional profile, work experience or skills, and education listed. You should make sure that your resume is not poorly typed or reproduced, and again, don't make a copy of a copy. Any irrelevant information is not needed, such as references to your personal life, hobbies, etc. If it's difficult to understand or it just doesn't make sense. If text fails to support the objective, meaning if you have something in your objective or profile statement, it should be backed up by your experience or work history. Poor layout or physical appearance. Be conservative with your font choices and colors. If it's overly boastful, again, be clear on your skills and abilities. You don't want to overpromise and then not deliver. Avoid jargon or highly technical language. If you work in a field with a lot of technical language, be sure that it is clear and acronyms are spelled out. And as always, check your punctuation, spelling, and grammar. Also, be sure that your tenses are correct. If you worked somewhere in the past, your bullet points should be in past tense. If you're currently working somewhere, your bullet points should be in present tense. Some other things to remember. First, make sure it looks professional and leave some white space. Also, the font size should not be smaller than 10. And make sure your resume has uniformity, meaning the same font and bullet points throughout. If printing out your resume, use good resume paper. If you need to have a 2-page resume, make sure each page is fully utilized. If you have a second page that only has a few sentences on it, you should reconsider and probably start editing your resume to get it down to 1 page. And stay away from using a lot of pronouns such as I assisted customers, I operated a cash register. You can drop the I and just write assisted or operated instead. And most of all, make sure your resume is accurate and honest. Don't set yourself up for failure and list a bunch of things that you actually cannot do. Here are the common resume types that we'll go over more in depth. First, the chronological resume, which is the most common resume type. This resume type is good for those with a solid work history. The bulk of this resume is the work experience section, starting with your most recent job and working backwards from there. The heading is professional and to the point. The professional profile includes a brief statement of the position they are seeking, along with some bullet points of accomplishments and/or relevant skills and experience. The experience section lists employment dates first. Again, if you haven't worked in a while or have employment gaps or didn't stay at jobs for very long, this may not be the right resume type for you. Education is at the bottom. If you have very relevant education, such as a vocational certificate or college degree, you can choose to put your education more towards the top. It's just a matter of preference. Also, if you've worked for a staffing agency or temp service, you'll notice on this resume that Manpower is listed as the second employer. You don't need to list each assignment as its own job. Manpower is technically the employer, so it's left as one position. Just be sure to include the entirety of dates that you worked for them. Next is the functional resume. This resume type is mainly for those with no work history, such as recent high school graduates. The bulk of this resume is based around skills, either soft skills or more hard technical skills. The skill sections can be tailored to each position you apply for. At the bottom, you'll note that the person lists their high school achievements since they're a recent high school graduate. But if you have work history, high school achievements should not be listed, as most likely they are no longer relevant. Finally, the combination resume. This resume type is a combination of the chronological and functional because it includes both skills and work experience. The bulk of this resume type is the skills section. For this particular example, the person breaks down their skills into 2 different categories and then lists specific skills, duties, or accomplishments within those areas. These skills categories can also be tailored to the specific job you're applying for. Work experience is still listed at the bottom, but it's brief and to the point with just employer names, locations, and dates. Since the dates are not at the forefront, gaps or having short-term jobs are not as easily noticed or highlighted. For your heading, make sure to include your full first and last name and ensure it is capitalized. If you're choosing to include your home phone number on your resume, make sure whoever answers your home phone will be ready to take the call. Also, make sure your voicemail message is appropriate. You can choose to omit your address. Generally, if an employer needs to contact you, they will do so by either phone or email. If you still want to leave it on, make sure you capitalize appropriately, or you can choose to just include your city, state, and zip code. Finally, make sure your email address is professional. Having an unprofessional email address can substantially limit your chances of getting an interview. Having some version of your name is fine. Don't do anything like Jeff's wife or love my dog. If your name is common, including 1 or 2 numbers in your email address is fine. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the professional profile. Remember, an objective statement is typical and it states what you are seeking from the employer. But a professional profile statement is more proactive and it states what you can do for them. There are many different ways you can organize and display your professional profile. You've seen in our examples that some choose to have a few sentences at the top, or list bullet points, or do both. Regardless of which way you do it, always make sure to tailor your professional profile to the job you're applying for. Consider the top skills and strengths that the job is looking for, and if you have those skills, make sure that they are in your professional profile, since that's one of the first things the employer reads. It's a bonus if you can quantify your accomplishments or experiences. Adding numbers shows concrete data. Instead of saying that you train new coworkers, saying something like train 10 new coworkers in a 1-year period is more substantial and impressive. Also, if you're using months or years of experience, use the numerical instead of writing out the word. It's more eye-catching. So what format and layout works best for you? You have to consider your work history as well as your skills. As mentioned before, if there is something in your work history that may be a red flag to employers, such as being out of the workforce for some time or employment gaps, you may want to consider using a combination resume since it focuses more on your skill set. If you are switching fields, the combination resume type is also a safe choice since you can focus more on your transferable skills. Regardless, always tailor your resume to the job you're applying for. If you routinely apply for jobs in many different fields, having multiple versions of your resume can help, such as one that focuses on the medical field and another one that focuses on customer service, so that you don't have to do a lot of tweaking each time. And as far as cover letters go, if you're sending a cover letter along with your resume, just make sure both of the headings match. Thank you for listening. If you have any further questions, please contact your local West Michigan Works. Have a great day.